welcome back. So, we will be continuing with the environmental planning part. In today's lecture, we are going to cover environmental planning. Why is it strategic type of planning? What's the importance? What's the process? And one case study of like where environmental plan might have been implemented. So, in previous class, we studied what is planning and we saw different types of planning, and based on the importance of contents, the most important one was the strategic planning. The strategy means making a plan or making a decision. So, environmental planning is also, it involves decision making and to carry out land development. When I say land development, because we are talking about terrestrial, like the earth's surface, so it can be anywhere on the earth, it can be on the water. In that sense it says land development with consideration given to the natural environment, the surroundings around us. And when I say surrounding, natural environment would include the biotic components of the environment as well as the abiotic components of the environment, but the interaction between them, that is covered by social, political, economic and governance factors, and it should provide a holistic framework to achieve sustainable outcomes. So, that is the process of environmental planning, decision making to carry out land development while considering the natural and the human based environmental factors and provide sustainable outcomes. So, when we say sustainable outcomes, if you know, sustainable means it has to be environmentally, economically and socially acceptable. So, that is a sustainable outcome, and that is why those factors, social, political, economic and governor, again which has to do a lot with community and society along with environment. So, all three pillars of sustainability are covered in the definition of environmental planning. And when we say environmental planning, it is not like there would be environmental disasters happening every now and then, or there would be some leakages happening from the company. All of us know about Bhopal gas tragedy, right? It was a very unfortunate incident which happened and which has been written in history, and even today everyone gives example of it when we have to explain something related to disaster. So, this effective planning typically prepares us for what if or sensitivity analysis questions. So, these things may not happen and should not happen, but what if something happens? What if there is a leakage? What if there is a failure of the reactor? What if there is emissions from the chimney beyond the compliance limit? So, in that cases, the effective planning would tell us what measures and what solutions or what are the remedies that one can put it in action to avoid those changes or damages. So, that is the basis or that is the main intention behind environmental planning, to foresee some future decisions, to future things which may happen because of the errors or mistakes in either technology or in the human operation, and to be ready for those decisions, to be ready for those situations. So, that comes under what if or sensitivity analysis. Let us take one example or the associated goals, like why would any company or organization would want to go for environmental planning or sustainability. So, there are different goals, different intentions. So, most common ones are written here. One is environmental protection. They genuinely care for environment and they care about the laws and regulations which prohibits them from damaging or destructing the environment. So, environmental protection is one of the most important goal, followed by sustainable land use, pollution prevention, climate change action. Almost all the industries, they do consume a lot of resources in the form of energy or water, and both consumes a lot of electricity, which is going to have impact on climate change, because most of the electricity and heat is coming from fossil fuels. Ecosystem conservation, because of use of resources from nature, the ecosystems get damaged, and to conserve them, it is an important goal. Public health focus, again public health is very much dependent on environment. We need clean air, clean water, we need greenery, okay, we need oxygen to survive. So, that is the public health focus, because of which environmental planning becomes important for all the industries and organizations. Resource management and stakeholder engagement. So, these are the goals associated with environmental planning. Let us take one example. This is I think from somewhere from South America. So, objective was to improve reforestation and vegetation efficiency. So, this was somewhere in the mining land. So, since in mining it becomes very difficult to get that area back to a vegetation level or a forest level. So, if we have to improve that, that is the one case study given to us. There are multiple ways to do that. You can plant fruit species, you can control exotic and invading species. If there is a forest fire, we can create fire gaps so that vegetation do not get lost. Then we can use some different species for reforestation. You can use organic or natural fertilizers. So, all these things are sort of some solutions that would help improve reforestation and vegetation efficiency, right. Now, does it involve does it mean environmental planning? Because there is one problem which is identified. There are 5-6 alternative solutions or many more solutions are possible. How do we make a plan to contribute to solve this problem? Again, it will need some basic aspects of planning which deals with, you define the objective first. How much reforestation or how much vegetation efficiency we want to improve. Suppose at present it is 10%, our target, let us set it to 50%. So, we want to increase efficiency of vegetation from 10% to 50%. So, that is our objective. Once we define the objective, now we can identify the key activities, and all these things, these 5 points which are mentioned here can go under the umbrella of key activities, because these are the things which you would be required to do to improve reforestation as well as vegetation. Then you allocate resources, obviously like how much money we have, how much land we have, how much resources we have, how much manpower we have. Accordingly, we would allocate resources to each of these 5 key activities. Then you establish timelines. Some of these activities would take less time, some of these activities would take longer time. So, you establish like reasonable timelines for each activity. Then you assess risk associated with each activity implementation, and if there are any risk which we could identify at this planning stage, you also propose a mitigation strategy for those risks. That is a part of planning. You assess the risk and then you propose mitigation strategies, and then you do the monitoring and evaluation. When I say you do monitoring and evaluation, at this stage you just propose the methodology, how you are going to monitor and how you are going to evaluate whether the reforestation and vegetation efficiency is improved or not. So, all these aspects would come under the case of environmental planning for this particular example. Hope it is clear. Moving to next slide. So, since for most of the corporate world, profit is the main motive, or economics is the prior, like the main objective, having environmental front integrated in the corporate culture, it often needs the attention of top management, because if the top or executive level management is is convinced that their company is responsible to conserve and contribute to environmental protection, then it will be easy for rest of the company to follow. Even the company's policies would include the environmental front only when top management wish or approves it. Then most of the strategies that would be required to achieve environmental front or the sustainable development, that will need lot of restructuring, reshuffling of organization. A new culture would be required to develop in the company which has not been working towards environment, and now they are suddenly asked, okay, you have to change your processes because it has to be environmental friendly. Then it will need capital investment and it needs long term planning. These are the reasons why top management should be brought into picture and should be convinced first if they are considering adding the elements of sustainability or environmental planning and management in their organization. So, why environmental planning is important? Obviously, one is regulations and compliance. Every organization is supposed to follow it. In India, we have CPCB and SPCB, right? Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution Control Boards, which set up the regulations and compliances which every company or organization has to follow. Then CSR and the reputation of the company. You might have heard about ISO 14000 standards. Okay. So, it is the international standard, it is a voluntary standard, but since we live in the era of globalization and industrialization, where climate change is highly talked about topic, customers are aware like what companies are responsible, what industries are responsible for environmental degradation. So, as a part of CSR, corporate social responsibility, every profit making or company, they need to contribute something towards society. So, that part can also be contributed to environment, and having these kind of certifications or eco-friendly labels or organic labels, they help build their reputation and trust among customers, which will result into economic benefits and some cost savings also. Okay. Many times protecting or contributing to environment will need improvement in process efficiencies, that may need some change, some shift in machineries and the operation protocols, and at times it can lead to some cost savings and economic benefits. Every time it need not add to the cost to contribute to environmental protection. Then interested parties expectations and investor interest. Like I said, since people are becoming more aware about environmental laws and legislations, both from the customer side as well as from the investor side, they are keen on investing in those companies which are more eco-friendly or which are concerned about environment and sustainability more. Just take one example, like if you go to a shopping mall and if you are given option of having 2 bags for a cloth, the one bag is of say 4 rupees, which is a plastic bag, and one bag is of 5 rupees, which is let us say biodegradable, some jute bag. Okay. I think more than 90% of the people would go for the 5 rupees, because it is just additional 1 rupee, but that gives the sense of satisfaction that okay, with one of this small action we contributed towards environment. So, that is the expectations of interested party. So, these are different reasons why environmental planning and management is becoming important for organizations. Now, since I said previously it becomes difficult to integrate environmental front in corporate culture. So, there are different ways to do that. What are those ways? Some of them are given here: expanded innovation and productivity. If there is a way, or if there is a more better way, eco-friendlier way to make a particular product, I think then a company should try to go for it. Again, if it is not coming at say extremely high cost, like if it is not increasing cost by 10 times, but if it is increasing cost by say 1.5 times, then I think it is worth going for a eco-friendlier option that adds to expanded innovation and productivity. In the course of like achieving better environmental performance or reduce environmental impact, a company can think of integrating environmental front, improved bottom line, which is basically reducing cost. Since profit is the main motive, any reduction in cost would add to revenue or profit. So, that is one intention, one motivation. Better handling of volatile environmental controversies. Whenever there is a new company coming up in the environmentally sensitive area or area where a community is living nearby, there would be some controversies, and to handle them in a better way, I think if there are people in the company who know about environment and sustainability, it would those kind of issues would be handled better. Enhance credibility and trust amongst customers, amongst investors, more employee involvement in community relations. Like community relations is a social aspect of sustainability, and if more and more employees are involved in those sustainability pillars, it will help integrate the environmental front in corporate culture. Again, there are many ways, like say for example, some companies they promote like usage of EVs. Nowadays in India, lot of companies in Bangalore, they are giving incentives to buy EV, electric vehicles, to contribute to environment, and people are moving towards EV. Similarly, there are some companies in abroad which promotes use of bicycles within the company premises. These are the ways where environmental front can be incorporated in the corporate culture. Now, coming back to the previous question, like we said environmental planning is strategic, but why it is strategic? Let us look at it. So, for any company, a corporate, bottom line is what do your bosses want, what is the top management want, and what do they understand? What do top management understand? Whether they understand sustainability, whether they understand environmental front is important or not, okay, that is the bottom line. So, and that bottom line sets the core objective of any businesses, which is typically profit. Obviously, if you do not get profit, why would you run a business? So, one intention is profit, other is profit for everyone, like maximize all the shareholders' wealth. Those are the core objectives of businesses. So, now with something like environmental protection coming into picture, at times it may happen the top management feels that if we try to integrate environmental protection front in the corporate culture, it may conflict or it may be in dispute with the core objective of the company, and that may be the perception. Okay. Now, to get rid of this perception, we need a efficient middle level management who are typically experts as environmental consultants. So, that is the reason why environmental planning also takes the same approach as a strategic planning, because it will be through thorough strategic planning of all the environmental issues some team would carry, and then that team would convince the management that okay, this is the damage that our company's activities are committing towards environment, and if we do not address them, these are the penalties, these are the fines, this is the like reputation that we are putting at stake, these and all these things, not just negative things, all the positive things which may happen after like incorporating environmental front in corporate culture, that should be explained to the top management in the form of reputation or money. How we are going to earn more and more by incorporating environmental front, if that is convinced or if that is conveyed properly to top management, then it will be easier for them to integrate environmental front in the corporate culture, and all this activity would be done through strategic planning. That is why environmental planning is a kind of strategic planning. If you look at the typical process, what happens, like previously we studied one example of like improving vegetation efficiency and reforestation, what are possible options and how we do it, right. The similar process is applied in environmental planning process. First thing is you define the scope and identify the problem. Okay. So, scoping and problem identification. Once we know what is the problem and what is the scope, what is the boundary of our system in which we have to work, we know the at least direction. Now, if you remember the strategic planning thing, where we are, where we want to go. So, to know where we are, we need to do baseline assessment. So, where we are at present, what are the activities in our organization which may have impact on environment. So, if we could just list down those activities, that is fine, that will make our inventory. Now, when I say activities which may have impact, so there is a possibility of impact. So, third step is impact assessment. So, once you know the activities, you calculate the impact, and now to reduce that impact, if there are any other alternatives, if we change some process, are we going to modify or change that impact? That is the thing which we take into account. Then mitigation and enhancement. After changing the process or having alternatives is done, after that also there will be some impact. So, how to mitigate and enhance the existing process, that would be taken. Then decision making and authorization. Okay, this particular alternative is going to work better and this enhancement is going to work. So, then we do the monitoring and management and stakeholder engagement and communication. So, each of these stages need to be strategically discussed and written in the form of a plan, which typically we call as environmental management plan, and it can be a small or a lengthy document depending on company and the number of activities involved within that company. Some companies may have even 400 pages long environmental management plan, because they try to cover each and every activity and each and every activity's impact on each and every possible component of the environment. Like I said, what if sensitivity analysis. So, what if scenarios, there may be n number of possibilities of what if scenarios for a bigger company like refinery, what we say, mines and all. So, that is a typical environmental planning process, and these 7 points, these are generic planning steps which can be applied here also. Like obviously, to do the planning, to do the analysis, you would need a team. So, you put together a team, you develop vision, you define the needs of, here it is the example of community, but you define the needs for compliance or for organization, and you find alternatives or possible solutions. You put the plan together, carry out your plan, evaluate your plan, and then it goes on a cyclic mode. So, this putting, carrying out and evaluating plan, these also like it has to be only documented, like this is how we will be putting our plan together, this is how we would be carrying out our plan, this is how we would be evaluating the plan. Okay. So, planning does not necessarily involve any action or activity which involves like say production, selling, marketing and all. It basically involves strategizing, decision making and preparing the whole document which will be actually implemented while performing actual actions in the subsequent stages. So, this is one last, I think we are coming towards the end of the lecture with a case study of like a environmental planning. So, this is a 15-minute city model for Paris. Paris is the capital city of France, and this from a recent study. And if you look at how the city is planned, it says when I say 15-minute city, it means from any society within that city, all the basic necessities, the essential necessities like say school, college, hospital, post office, all those things, bus stops, they are within 15 minutes reach. You can either go by walk, by bicycle or by bike or car or by public transportation. The city is planned so nicely that all the basic amenities of daily usage are within 15 minutes reach of people. So, that is called an efficient urban planning, is not it? And again urban planning, it is a part of environment, it is one type of environmental planning. So, it is a live example of 15-minute city model, like schools, hospitals, shops, all the recreational zones like say blue green corridors and all, they are within the 15 minutes from each society. Okay. Pedestrian and cycling infrastructure is also there. There is a sustainable transportation. Almost all the residential zones they have green spaces, and it also helps to maintain the urban temperature and air quality. So, that is how, that is one example of a successful environmental plan, or in this case it is a urban plan. In the next lecture, we are going to discuss different types of environmental planning, where we will be talking about urban planning, land use planning. So, this case study fits very well as a part of urban planning, but again since urban planning is a type of environmental planning, it goes well here also. So, to summarize, we covered today the concept of environmental planning, how it is a strategic planning, what are the associated goals, what is its importance and process, how corporates or the organizations can integrate environmental front in their corporate culture, along with example of couple of case studies. So, thank you so much.